everyone. We are talking about neonatal assessment and newborn reflexes. So there's two different assessments that we're going to really focus on. The first of which is the APGAR exam. This was designed by Dr. APGAR, and it's assessed twice. First, right at birth, and then 5 minutes later. And it assesses heart rate, skin color, respiration, muscle tone, and response to a mildly painful stimulus. They do this to sort of look at the overall health of the newborn, to see if there's anything that the infant is struggling with. Are they struggling to breathe? Are they struggling with heart rate? Is their muscle tone good? Is their color good? Are they having this typical responsiveness to pain? So that, again, it's an easy, quick way to assess the health of the infant and see if the infant needs additional help. They're given a score of 0 to 10, and we see that above 7 indicates a healthy newborn, and you'll see why here. So again, they do this twice. They do this at birth and then 5 minutes after birth, and they do that because things can change in those first 5 minutes. So infant might be having problems kind of breathing at birth, but clearing the airways may correct that. And then at 5 minutes, we're fine and we're not having any problems there. And so because they'll be able to breathe better, they're going to have better color as well. So both of these things. So this was designed again by Dr. APGAR, but not only is it named after her, but they've made it into kind of an anagram here. So we have the A, appearance, which is what we call body color here, pulse, which will be heart rate, grimace, which will be reflex irritability, again, that mildly painful stimulus, activity, that's gonna be their muscle tone, and then respiration is obviously the respiratory effort. And they're scored between 0 and 2, and they again are scored twice. And so this is how you get a score between 0 and 10. So if you're getting a 0 on everything, you get a 0. If you get a 2 on everything, you get a 10. And so again, you can see that where those scores are coming from. If it's above 7, we're seeing that infant as a healthy infant. There's a video that shows you this APGAR exam on e-learning for you to watch that's required. And then there's also a video that's linked in the supplements from 1964 with Dr. APGAR herself. So that's a supplement. You aren't required to watch that, but if you're interested, it is there. The next one we're going to talk about is the Brazelton Neonatal Behavioral Assessment Scale. And this really is done, so APGAR's done right after birth. The Brazelton is done more after birth. So we see anywhere from 24 to 36 hours after birth, but can go up to 2 months after birth. And this really is starting to look at the infant's temperament and the reactions to stimuli. It looks at 4 different categories, including attention, social responsiveness, muscle tone, physical movement, control of alertness, and then their physiological responses to stress. And again, both this and the APGAR are really helpful at letting us know kind of the health and the development of the infant, but only during this early period of life. So you won't be able to look at the APGAR and measure guess their health when they're 5. You're not gonna be able to look at the Brazelton and see what their social responsiveness at 7 is gonna be. This is gonna be in that early period in infancy and early in infancy at that they'll be able to, that these will be helpful. There's a video for you to watch that's from YouTube with Dr. Brazelton, showing you these neonatal behavioral assessments and what these different things look like. And again, that's linked in e-learning for you to watch. It's a requirement. Another thing that they look at with infants early on to assess their health are their reflexes. So reflexes are innate behaviors. You have reflexes. And they're, in infants, they really are, a lot of them essential to survival. But the reason that we use them as a neonatal assessment is because they are an indicator of the baby's brain and nervous system development. So if they're not there, we know that there's a problem. If the reflexes stay too long and don't diminish, we know there's a problem. So these are, again, good indicators of the baby's brain and nervous system development that they can look at pretty easily and see as a measure of that. So some examples of those are the rooting reflex. That was the picture you saw before where they were stroking baby's face and baby was turning towards this stroking. This is really helpful for feeding because it can help the baby find the bottle of the breast. So stroking on either side of the face, and the infant will turn towards the direction of the stroking. The palmar reflex is the one we all love. We're like, oh, the baby likes me. Baby grabbed onto my finger. Baby doesn't like you. That's a palmar reflex. It'd be great if it was, but it's that grasping response due to pressure. Remember when I said that these are essential to survival? The rooting reflex is essential for feeding. The palmar reflex is very important for attachment. What does it feel like when that baby grabs your finger? It feels amazing. It makes you want to take care of this cute, cuddly baby. That's good for baby survival, to have adults and other children interested in its existence and maintaining its existence. Another reflex is the Moro reflex. This is also known as the startle reflex. This is when baby thrusts their arms and their legs outward and arches their back. This can be in response to a loud sound. This could be in response to a change in posture. Things like that. The stepping reflex is what it sounds like. It sounds like taking steps. It is reflexive, so it's not baby super advanced. It is a reflex. And again, it mimics that motion of walking. This can be done by holding baby upright, kind of putting their feet on the flat surface or stroking the top of their foot. There is, again, another video for you to watch because as interesting it is to hear me talk about these, seeing the babies do them is much, much better and so much cuter. So there is a video for you to watch with infant reflexes as well. Again, these reflexes are inborn, automatic, and they're in a response to a particular stimulation. So stroking, the pressure on the hand is the palmar. The stroking of the cheek is the rooting. The top of the foot or on a flat surface would be the stepping. And again, they're important. The reason that we're talking about them and the reason that we're talking about them in relation to neonatal assessment is that, again, it provides information about the nervous system. And again, we talked about those adaptive values. We talked about how it can contribute to the parent-infant interaction. When that baby grabs the finger, that's obviously feels really good, and it feels like an interaction with an infant that doesn't have a lot of capabilities yet. And so it can be very adaptive. Most of these diminish by 6 months, and this is because of cortex development. So the cortex is developed to a point that it can take over voluntary control instead of involuntary control. So it can kind of suppress this involuntary response because the cortex has taken over voluntary motor control of these things. So like if I shrink my cheek, I don't like turn to find the breast or the bottle, right? That's because my cortex, hopefully, is advanced enough that it has taken over that voluntary control. One of the exceptions that we see to this may have to do with what we'll talk about when we get to physical development and motor development. Esther Thalen's research, she really posted, and she's the one that does the dynamic systems theory. She really talks about how that stepping reflex might only be suppressed initially because baby's legs get so heavy and so cute, and all those cute little baby rolls on baby thighs, and they're too heavy to lift. And so that leg increase can kind of diminish that as well. She did research where she had baby in a harness, waist down in a tub of water, and so baby they could still have that stepping reflex. So some of that suppression of that one earlier may actually have to do with cute baby foot thighs and not as much to do with cortex development. Now, obviously, the cortex does still take over eventually and take over for voluntary behavior, but initially, and part of that diminishment is due to cute baby rolls. We also know that reflexes really can form this basis for voluntary complex behavior. So walking is incredibly complex. If you have the pattern of how to do that in your brain at birth, that is beneficial. And so having these reflexes the palmar grasp, being able to grab onto things and hold on. Having these things helps so that when we want to do those things voluntarily, we already have the blueprint for what that behavior looks like, for what that motor control looks like. It's just been switched from an involuntary to a voluntary kind of movement. So that ends our conversation about neonatal assessment. Our next discussion will be on states of arousal. Thanks, guys.